Welcome to What Made It So Popular, a series where I take a look back at one of the top 10 highest grossing movies in a given year and try to figure out why that movie in particular ended up capturing the attention of the audiences of its time. The first film I'm looking at is John Ford's Irish rom-com The Quiet Man, the 10th highest grossing movie of 1952. It's not quite as simple as checking the numbers or box office mojo to determine how much money movies made before the internet, because studios only reported what they called box office rentals, which was the money they received back from the theaters, not the actual total gross of the film. For this project, I'm using the math done by UltimateMovieRankings.com, a site that specializes in figuring out how much money older movies actually made. In its lifetime, The Quiet Man made $10.6 million on a $1.75 million budget, making it a massive financial success for John Wayne, John Ford, and Republic Pictures. At 10th place, this puts The Quiet Man behind other 1952 box office hits, such as the Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis comedy Jumping Jacks, John Huston's music drama and Best Picture nominee Moulin Rouge, Sailor Beware, yet another Martin and Lewis comedy, the all-time classic from Stanley Donen and Gene Kelly, Singin' in the Rain, Hans Christian Andersen, directed by Charles Vidor, Richard Thorpe's Ivanhoe, starring Robert Taylor and Elizabeth Taylor, the Best Picture nominee, The Snows of Kilimanjaro, directed by Henry King with Gregory Peck and Susan Hayward, the Cinerama exclusive experience This is Cinerama, and finally, Cecil B. DeMille's Best Picture winning circus epic, The Greatest Show on Earth. There's one very clear answer to the question asked by this video: the names. By 1952, John Ford and John Wayne were two of the biggest names in the movie business. John Ford is one of the most respected names in film history, known for his dozens of iconic Western films, his curmudgeonly attitude, and use of operatic spectacle and emotion that continue to fuel the perception many have for American history to this day. Before the release of The Quiet Man, John Ford had had 6 of his films nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards, and had won a decade prior for another film of his based in Ireland, How Green Was My Valley. On top of his Best Picture nominations, John Ford had also been nominated for Best Director 4 times, and had won 3 times, for The Informer, Grapes of Wrath, and How Green Was My Valley. The success of The Quiet Man would eventually lead him to his 4th Best Director win, marking him as the director with the most Best Director wins in history.
In the absence of the winner, John Wayne will accept the award for John Ford.
He had also directed Victor McLaglen to a Best Actor win for The Informer in 1935, and he would be back, being nominated 17 years later for Best Supporting Actor in The Quiet Man. John Ford's films consistently made back their budgets and were popular with audiences and critics alike, which certainly helped to lead The Quiet Man to being a big box office success. John Ford had given John Wayne a starring role in his 1939 film Stagecoach, but his star power didn't really take off until the late 1940s when he starred in 5 popular westerns: Red River, directed by Howard Hawks, Alan Dwan's The Sands of Iwo Jima, and Fort Apache, 3 Godfathers, and She Wore a Yellow Ribbon, all directed by John Ford. The success of these films pushed John Wayne into the top 10 highest paid stars for the first time in 1949, a title he would hold for 24 of the next 25 years, until 1974, shortly before he retired in 1976 and then passed away in 1979. The Quiet Man is based on a short story also called The Quiet Man, written by Irish author Maurice Walsh, and published in 1933 in the Saturday Evening Post. Ford loved that short story so much that he bought the rights to make it into a film for $10 in 1936, with the promise that the author would be paid more when the film was actually produced. Despite the proven box office and critical success of its star and director, The Quiet Man was a hard sell to studios. Ford wanted to partially film on location in Ireland, and the movie lacked the spectacle and American pomp that Ford and Wayne's other collaborations had. So major studios like RKO and MGM passed on Ford when he tried to get the movie funded. The studio that finally said yes was Republic Pictures, a studio I hadn't even heard of before watching The Quiet Man. And sure, they said they would pay for Ford to make his movie, but with an entire other film's worth of an asterisk. Before they could make The Quiet Man, John Ford, John Wayne, and Maureen O'Hara had to make Rio Grande for Republic. It was as traditional of a Western as you can get, featuring John Wayne in Texas on horseback, fighting against Native Americans. It was made for a smaller budget than The Quiet Man, at just over $1 million, but it was able to gross $6.4 million. Rio Grande was the first on-screen pairing of John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara, the first of 4 collaborations between the two of them, nicely setting up the precedent for 2 years later when The Quiet Man finally hit the big screen. Republic was a studio known for making B-pictures, serials, and westerns, films that could be made quickly and cheaply and consistently turn a profit. This made their agreement to fund major films from John Ford quite an anomaly, and turned out to be one of the biggest successes that they had in their 32-year history. Despite the excitement surrounding a new Ford and Wayne collaboration, The Quiet Man didn't place number 1 at the domestic box office until its 5th week of release. This was quite common at the time though, as films consistently opened in fewer theaters and limited release, and used that time to build positive word of mouth before expanding into wide release for the entire country to see. The Quiet Man was also a critical success, being nominated for 5 Academy Awards including Best Screenplay for Frank S. Nugent, Best Sound Recording, Best Art Direction, Best Supporting Actor for Victor McLaglen as Red Will Danaher, and Best Picture. It won 2 Oscars, with Best Director for John Ford and Best Color Cinematography. Adjusted for inflation, The Quiet Man would have made $124 million domestically. This would place it alongside the domestic grosses of recent films such as Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, Nope, and Ghostbusters Afterlife, putting it in the top 15 to 20 highest grossing movies of 2021, 2022, or 2023. This may not sound that impressive, but the budget of The Quiet Man was a fraction of what those previously mentioned movies cost to make, at around $20 million adjusted for inflation, compared to $68 million for Nope, $75 million for Ghostbusters Afterlife, and a staggering $215 million for Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, making it many times more profitable than any of those modern movies. To this day, The Quiet Man is a film loved by the audiences that grew up with it. It holds a 91% on Rotten Tomatoes, and is consistently shown in theaters during March to celebrate St. Patrick's Day, which is how I recently saw it for the first time. As a romance movie set in Ireland, it offers something quite different from the other films that people usually associate with John Wayne and John Ford. But that distinct quality from 2 of the biggest names of the 50s were part of why The Quiet Man became one of the highest grossing movies of 1952. Thanks for watching this retrospective of The Quiet Man, trying to figure out why it was one of the highest grossing films of 1952. If you're interested in my thoughts on other related films, I have a full review of Best Picture winner How Green Was My Valley. Click the card in the corner or the link in the description to check that out. Obviously, make sure to subscribe for more videos like this and share this with your friends so they can learn about what made The Quiet Man so popular. To close, here's the trailer for The Quiet Man, so you can get a taste of how Republic Pictures marketed the film to the audiences of the 1950s.
I'd like to tell you about The Quiet Man. He's John Wayne in a picture you'll soon be cheering. It's the story of Sean Thornton, a right-intended man who came from America to forget his past in Innisfree. There he met a fiery red-headed lass, and the village marriage broker went to work.
That's a pretty bonnet you have on.
Bonnet? Don't you be talking to me about bonnets, after leaving mine stuck up there like a...
Easy now. Have the good manners not to hit the man until he's your husband, and entitled to hit you back.
Then her bully of a brother, Red Will Danaher, refused to pay her rightful dowry.
There'll be no locks or bolts between us, Mary Kate, except those in your own mercenary little heart.
Mary Kate left him to go to Dublin, but he caught her at the station and brought her back with the whole town watching him do it.
I'll pay you. Never.
Then the fight was on, a fight they're still talking about in Innisfree. It's a wonderful picture, the finest ever brought to the screen by John Ford, and he's won 3 Academy Awards. His direction makes unforgettable the performances of John Wayne, Maureen O'Hara, Barry Fitzgerald, and Victor McLaglen.